Okay, sorry guys. Right, let's go for a drive, I think. Let's have a look. So I've got to get my son from football. No, not from football. My son. Oh yes. So we're in the 1967 camper. Let's just make sure I don't hit my van. Let's have a look. It's quite close. Right, okay. We're in a bit of a tight spot, guys. So, yeah. Put my glasses. I don't really need my... When it's sunny like this, I don't really need my glasses. I only really wear glasses if it's... My son from... So, my son's exhaust has come apart. So, I've lent him the money. You know, it's funny because I say I lend it them, but they never pay me back. £250 to fix his exhaust. He's only owned it for about 5 or 6 weeks. I'm so unlucky with cars, guys. Whenever I talk to you about my problems, it's always car related. And the reason it's always car related is because we've got so many cars, because obviously my wife's got a car. My daughter has a car. I have this camper, 1967 Volkswagen split screen. I bought this because it was 1967 and I do love VWs. I love Beetles as well. I restore classic cars, I restore Beetles, I restore campervans, but I've actually restored quite a few different old cars, and I've been working on cars since I was a kid. Even my dad was a mechanic for the Cyprus Army. Now my dad wasn't in the army, but he worked for the army, and he would even help fix their tanks and aeroplanes, and that's how my dad learned to speak English. My dad's brother worked for the Ministry of Defence in Cyprus when in the 90s, I'm trying to remember the years, I'm trying to get it right, I think in the 50s. I think it was then where he learned how to speak English. Him learning to speak English is why he wanted to come to England, yeah? It was quite unusual for a Greek Cypriot man in the 50s to be able to speak English, so he moves to London with his friends. The streets were paved in gold. Now my dad, when he moved to London, I think he worked as a garage for a while, but eventually rented a cafe. Do you remember those cafes where they had pinball? You know, the cafes were the meeting place for the teenagers of the 50s, weren't they? The rock and roll 50s. And then a bit later, the 60s, obviously with the Beatles and that. You would meet up, have a milkshake and a burger. Obviously, the American beef burger was made famous through rock and roll. It was very cool, wasn't it, to have a burger? Films like Rebel Without a Cause, things like that. You know, Marlon Brando type films, you know, on the motorbike. My dad rented a cafe in London and ran it with a friend. That's what introduced my father into the cafe culture. My dad was quite Elvis-y looking. He had a quiff. He loved Elvis, he loved the Beatles, he loved Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin. My dad was a bit of a gambler. Sammy Davis Jr., yeah? You know, that era. Marilyn Monroe, all that stuff, yeah? Eventually my dad had a friend who lived in Weston-super-Mare. Weston-super-Mare is my hometown. I'm 20 minutes from Bristol. my dad liking Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., you know, is it the Rat Pack? Is that what they were called? The Rat Pack? Had an influence on me. Because when I was a young kid, you know, I'm talking 4 or 5 years old now, you know, my dad would dress up, he would wear a black suit with a tie. My dad, I always remember thinking how handsome my father was. Even, you know, my dad did have problems. He had a bad temper. He could be violent. You know, in those days, it was seen as cool to be very strict with your kids and hit your kids and control your family. To hit your wife and control your wife. I mean, I'm completely against that. I would never ever hit my kids or my wife. I would never dream of it. I have never hit a woman. I have never hit my kids, ever. Yeah? Never ever. In fact, I probably would cry my eyes out if anything like that happened. Obviously I adore my kids, I adore my wife. Violence has never been an answer for me, ever. So I've always thought that my dad, because he looked a bit Elvisy, dressed a bit like Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, you know, had an influence on me as a small child, and which is why I did notice when I was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I noticed that anything rock and rolly, anything from the 50s, really grabbed my attention. Like when I first saw Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean, or West Side Story, and then as I got older, the Fonz, you know, Happy Days. I was a bit older then. I just was very influenced. Like the Beatles, when I discovered the Beatles, it really took me back. Yeah, and I've always thought that my dad's, and my mum, because my mum loved Elvis, my mum loved the Beatles. I've always thought it influenced me without me even knowing it. My dad's friends would dress like Dean Martin. They thought they were really cool, you know, with a cigarette in the corner of their mouth. And then obviously all the TV programs that were showing them that were popular, I think influenced me a lot. You know, think just the Fonz, obviously, the Waltons. Eventually you get the Bionic Man, the $6 Million Man, you get the Incredible Hulk. That's, you know, we're going more into the 70s now, but I just feel that I feel lucky to have grown up through that. I also feel lucky that I was influenced so much by my father's friends. Look, my father would meet all his friends and they would all gamble, play poker together, smoking their cigarettes all night and drinking their Greek coffees, because both my parents are Greek Cypriot. My dad would run a bit of a little club, a poker's club, where they would all come together and drink coffee and gamble and play poker, and they would bet on the horses. Betting on the horses was a big deal for my dad. So anyway, I'm getting to the car park, guys, so I'm gonna have to stop. Just a little introduction into the things that influenced me, how my father influenced me when I was so you know, literally a child, a small child. Yeah. So right, I'm gonna pull in here. Okay. There he is. There's my son. Right. 1 second. Let me just. Right, I'm with my son now. Right, okay guys, I'll be back later. See you later, alligator.